Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, I'm excited. Today's podcast is sort of in line. I was just sort of getting my gravel set up ready for racing this year. I'm going to do a bunch of gravel races, so I'm trying to, research all my aero helmets and tire plugs and tire inserts and which tires are fast. So
yeah, this has been an expensive sounding week as you've been showing me links. I'm not going to lie here.
You got to buy your speed,
Uh-huh. Well, if you do open up the Giro time trial helmet web shop and start looking for the ones that Jumbo Visma has, we're getting a divorce.
Oh, well, I only ride Bontrager, so
yeah, well,
why are you partial to these Jumbo? Oh, you mean those helmets?
Yeah, those helmets.
Oh, those ones.
Yeah.
Those aren't for gravel, really, but I guess you could try.
Sorry, it's like Visma Lisa Bike. I am never going to get used to these like new name changes for all of the different road teams. It's very difficult. Visma Lisa Bikes, ridiculous time trial helmet is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But that is not what we are talking about today. We are talking about all things gravel. And if you are racing gravel and you are currently not using a gravel training plan, we definitely have quite a few of those over in Peter's Training Peaks. We also have custom made for you gravel training plans you can get. All kinds of fun stuff. You can check that out over at consummateathlete.com. We'll also just include some links in the show notes if you are gravel curious but are getting a little stressed about being prepared for it. We'll have all of those links. Peter actually just helped me put together a gravel training plan over at bicycling.com as well. So if you're a bicycling subscriber, you can get a free 12-week training plan over there.
It was a good one, actually. I liked building that one, and it was, there was someone who was more beginner gravel getting ready for a 50 or 75 mile, fondo gravel sort of event. So first 50 miler, you might call it. But it was a fun one to build. So you can access there over in the bicycling if you have that subscription as well. Yeah.
But today's guest, we have Ben Delaney, who you might recall from, pretty much every cycling publication ever for the last couple decades. He and I have crossed paths so many times throughout the years, but he now is host of a YouTube channel, The Ride with Ben Delaney, and he is all things gravel.
And I've been impressed. You've mentioned us to a few people, and he's well known. It seems like people follow this show.
Yeah.
So why do people follow this show?
Well, he's actually kind of figured out a really cool niche in gravel where he's testing gravel bikes and gravel equipment and stuff, but he's doing it at races. So he's also then providing all this like race content and not
neat.
Race coverage of the pros or anything, more like here's the experience of the race as a pretty fast guy, but like still just a guy riding the race, not necessarily the, front of the pack kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I think it's super interesting. And I think that's a really good way of really testing out bikes is more of this, like, how does this actually handle in a race situation?
So it's cool. So he goes with like these tires and this frame or whatever. And then he's at this race though. So you sort of can get like preview of the race, but also a bit of like tire bike tech.
Yeah. So whether you're kind of into looking for what your next gravel event's going to be and you're kind of like, oh, what's interesting right now? Or you're looking for what my next bike is going to be, it's all kind of there. So
yeah, that's great. And I try and encourage clients to always go in and look. We actually spent a bunch of our lazy time after your 20 mile. I also did a longer bike ride, but your 20 mile, we'll say you were the tired one, not me. We spent our lazy recovery time on the weekend here watching the
Call of a Lifetime.
There we go, thank you. Which we had Shannon on, who the director of that series, and it was great. But I sent it after watching it to a few clients who are doing Sea Otter, the Fuego. And then also the Leadville, and then also the Big Sugar. It's just great.
And Unbound.
Great. These video, which I'm sure Ben's are fantastic too, is just to see the event and the terrain and get a feeling for like what are the roads like, what is the like environment like. Something like Leadville is so overwhelming. You're just in the middle of nowhere and at the top of a mountain. So these YouTube things are just such great preparation tools that I really encourage athletes to use. So Ben sounds like one that I'm going to have to go deeper on here to find all these race previews.
Yeah, for sure. And And this episode, we talk about kind of all things gravel, like what's new and interesting in gravel tech. What would you look for in a gravel bike right now? Which components would you go for? What's sort of the, I kind of tried to like pry a little bit on the what's the lowest you would go on a group set, or like the cheapest you would go on a group set, or what's flip side, what's the most expensive you would go on a group set. So really kind of pushed him on a lot of that stuff. A bit about the gravel tech, a bit about the what gravel races are looking cool this year, what's exciting, just sort of what he's learned over the years kind of doing this, because he's been, he's like me, he was sort of in more of the cyclocross road space as gravel was coming up, and I think we both sort of scoffed a little bit about, oh, now we need a gravel bike, and now it's like, oh, it's almost flipped now. It's like, oh, now you need a cyclocross bike?
Right.
You can't just use your gravel bike to race cyclocross?
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Which is a little, now I feel old, but it's okay. It's okay. I still have a cyclocross bike. It's fine. Anyway, we loved chatting about all things gravel. So if you have any other gravel racing questions, definitely hit us up over at consummateathlete.com. Check out Ben over at The Ride with Ben Delaney. We'll include a link to his YouTube in the show notes as well. And enjoy this episode. Okay, we're just going to have to like start recording because I'm about to ask you too many questions that are
that's a good start. Yeah, let's just get right into it. Sure.
Let's just get right into it. Ben Delaney, welcome to the Consummate Athlete podcast. I'm so excited to have you. But okay, before we get into your intro, you have to tell me about getting back from Colombia last night, bike packing race. What the heck?
Hi, Molly. Buenos
Hi.
dias. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat. And yes, just got back late last night from Colombia, which was awesome. So it's hard to describe all the different things that it was briefly, but I'll try to do so. Was there for Transcordilleras, which is a bike packing gravel stage race. There are 3 formats going on simultaneously. There is a nonstop version, 1,000 kilometers, which a certain Lawrence Tyndam completed in 3 days. The distance is impressive. The amount of climbing is bonkers. There's not a flat foot of road in Colombia. So something like 66,000 feet of climbing, and rugged. Like he rode a mountain bike with drop bars on it. Did that in 3 days. Slept 7 hours total. So that's for the full crazy. For the mostly crazy, there's an 8-day version, stage race, point to point. You carry all your stuff, but you sleep in hotels, which is how I was interested in it, because I love the point to point concept. But my friend Betsy Welch talks about there being 2 kinds of cyclists, indoor dogs and outdoor dogs. She's an outdoor dog. She's comfortable sleeping outside. Like she'll go to Hawaii for a week and pack flip-flops and a swimsuit and a rain jacket and a credit card, and that's it. I'm an inside dog. I like to go out and play, but then come back inside and lay down on soft, squishy things. So Transcordilleras, you can lay down on soft, squishy things and take a shower at the end of the day and get breakfast in the hotels, but you're carrying all the rest of your stuff on your bike.
I love that. I feel like, no, there's got to be a hybrid model, because I feel like I fall somewhere in between those two things where I can do the outdoor dog thing for like a certain amount of time, but then I need to come inside, as referenced by the fact that when we last talked, I was in a van and now we're in a nice Airbnb. So...
Yeah. Yeah, you were in a tent the last time we spoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was also a 3-day version, the Bambino version, which is what I did, and that was perfect. It left me wanting more. Some of my friends who did the 8-day were thoroughly cracked.
I can imagine.
Contemplating selling their bike, kind of cracked. So 3 days was fantastic. My first ever bike packing race.
Okay.
So it was a hoot.
Nice. And was there anything that you learned from the stage racing bike packing experience that you would take into the next thing? Anything that you wished you had? Any things that you really wished you hadn't bothered bringing? I feel like bike packing is all about like, oh, I wish I had this, and I really wish I wasn't carrying this.
Yes, I think that's the fun, and I think every time you're going to be slapping your forehead. So like some of my friends who did the 8-day had puffy jackets with them for part of the time, and then it was over 100 degrees, and they put the puffy jackets in the mail and shipped them on to their final destination, because it seemed silly to be carrying a puffy jacket when they were just sweating their faces off. I had some pretty pedestrian screw ups, like putting my electronic charging cables for my GoPro and camera and bike computer, etc., in the same bag as my toiletries. And then the soap that I was using for washing body and clothes exploded all over said electronics. I was like, huh, that was an own goal right there, you know?
Yep. Yep.
um,
That's,
uh,
yeah. I think that's a pretty common one, but also that's like one of those ones where you're like, a Ziploc baggie would have saved
yeah.
me here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I put all the stuff. It's 2 Ziploc bags. I had one Ziploc bag. I put all the stuff in one. That was dumb. I probably carried a little bit too much stuff, but also it depends on where you go. And one thing that I loved about being in Colombia was that it was kind of felt to me more like Europe, and that there's little shops everywhere. So in the US, if you go, even just like, I don't know what it is like where you are now, but even here in Colorado, we'll do a long ride on the weekend, and there is, a singular stop maybe that
Hmm.
you got to hit, because otherwise there's nothing forever. They're
And
like
that
every
place might be closed. Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, so here, like every few K, there'd be a tiny little tienda you can pop in, get water, little snacks. So
Oh, nice. Okay. Okay.
very,
So,
very, very, very few people took hydration packs with them. And normally I bring a hydration pack to whatever gravel race I do, because I'm thinking like, must stay with the group, must go fast. And here I was like, you know what? I've never been to this country in my life. I might not ever be again. I should stop and smell the roses and buy the stuff in the stores. And that's what other people are doing anyhow, just because, again, of the redonkulous amount of climbing. Why lug all that water when you can stop once or twice or 3 times and
mhm.
top off? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a hoot. That was a hoot. I had a blast.
Okay. So, would that be like a race you would recommend for people? Like, is that like a bucket list kind of item there?
Absolutely. Absolutely bucket list.
I love it. And we're going to have to come back to this hydration pack blazing through the aid stations commentary later, since we are getting
Yes.
into all things gravel.
Yes.
But before we get into that, we have to backtrack and let's give everyone kind of a bit of an explanation as to who you are and how you know everything about gravel at this point. Yeah. Give us your
Uh-oh.
quick mini bio.
I can give you an answer for the first part. The second part, that's just not true. Um, but I'm enjoying learning along the way as I'm grab guy. So my name is Ben Delaney. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've been slinging bike stories since I had a paper out as my first job back in the day as a kid. Did worked for a number of different cycling media publications, starting with trade publications like Bicycle Retailer. I learned about how the bike industry works and going to Taiwan, China, etc., looking at bike factories. Worked for race publications. I was the editor in chief of Velo News for a number of years. Then I worked for gear pubs like Bike Radar. But a little over a year ago, I started a YouTube channel all about riding and focusing on gear reviews and gravel bikes and gear in particular. And I do those in events whenever possible, primarily because it's fun. But the straight face explanation I give as to why I do that is because it just adds context. Like a thing by itself is all fine and good, but we're interested in at least I'm interested in the act of writing more than the thing itself. Like we can all dork out about, grams and technology and designs, but if we weren't writing them, I wouldn't care about that. Like there are some like engineer minded folks. That's not me at all. I want to go play, and I want stuff to go play with. So that's what I've been doing. The Ride with Ben Delaney is my YouTube channel. And I've
I
really
love
been
it.
enjoying doing that, and the interaction with people is how I know all the things. I don't know all the things, but one thing I love, perhaps you share, of being a journalist, and I still like to claim that title, even though I get called an influencer more now, which makes me squirm. Is that it just gives you, being a storyteller, I guess we can still agree that that's an appropriate term, gives you the excuse to talk to whomever about whatever. So I
Exactly.
love that. So don't
Yeah.
know all the things, but I'm asking all the questions all the time. Just now I was editing a video of with Natalia Franco Villegas, who's a pro racer and sports psychologist down in Columbia, about her top 5 things of Colombian cycling. So she's picking her brain about that stuff. And then as part of that, going into cafes, talking to people like, what's this? What's that? Like, what's the best food for cycling? And yeah, I love
I
that.
love
And
that. I
so
love that. And I think, well, it's funny. The journalist title is always like a difficult one because then it kind of implies written. But at this point, I feel like it's very hard to just be a journalist in solely written content anymore. So I kind of struggle with it too because I'm like, yes, journalism would be the main thing, but does that factor in podcasting and books and some video and like all this stuff? So I like
Right.
storyteller. That's where I've
Yeah.
fallen as well.
Yeah. Can we be a journalist without a journal? I've got a
Yeah.
piece of paper in my mom's house that says print journalism. That was my degree. And in Columbia, I found a typewriter. I thought that was funny. So I like posed for some pictures with a typewriter. Like, when's the last time I did that? But
Okay, this is amazing. So we're in Brevard, North Carolina right now, and I have had my eye on there's a billion antique stores here, and there is a 1940s typewriter in one of them, and it's been in the front window since we got here. And I am minutes away from buying it. I've like
I
walked
think
in,
you should.
I've pet the
I think you
keys, I've
should.
like awkward it's broken, but I think I can fix it. So yeah, I think now that you said it, I'm like, okay, this is the universe's sign that I'm gonna buy this typewriter for myself.
I think you should. I think you should. It
I
could be
love
like
it. I love it.
your spirit animal, your muse.
Just exactly. Exactly. Okay, so gravel racing. I mean, what was it about gravel that drew you to it for, starting this YouTube and really pushing your career in that direction? Because I mean, a lot of what you covered prior to this, was a lot of road, a lot of everything. But clearly this is like a niche that you have like fallen in love with.
Yeah. Um, like a lot of things, I didn't understand it at first and made fun of it awkwardly, and then
As we all did.
found myself doing it. Um, I credit Nick Legan, the guy who literally wrote the book on gravel riding and racing, for that, because when we were working at Villeneuve together, he was out doing the race that's now called Unbound, came back from that with like a motion photo sequence showing us pictures. And like the more he would show us, the more he'd tell us, and he'd get excited. The more we'd be shaking our heads, like, "What are you talking about? That sounds terrible. 200 miles, and you had to hide in a ditch because there's like a tornado blowing over. Like, why? What? I don't get it." But I've gone from that of shaking my head in disbelief to being one of these people who's a total evangelist for it, and other people are like, "That's a crazy person. What is he doing?" I'm like, "Come
Yeah.
on, you got to do this."
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
remember when I was at Cyclocross magazine, the first gravel bikes were getting launched. Like this is, a decade ago. And I remember, we kind of were making fun of them. We're like, oh, it's cyclocross bikes, but you've made them like slightly less racy. Like, what's the big deal? And now I'm like,
right.
that was the big deal.
Yeah, yeah, yes. I think I love a few things about it. One is having a bike you can ride kind of wherever. Definitely works on road, works on some tame trails, but then it works to ride around places where there are fewer cars, which is an attractive thing.
Hmm.
You can still have the social and this like athletic challenges of what I associate with road cycling, of group rides, riding with friends, and doing events. Um, but yes, it's a pretty versatile thing, and the events are feel not that I've done a lot of running events, but the events feel much more approachable in terms of um, my friend Leonard would talk about cyclocross having the right amount of anxiety. I was like, that's a silly thing to say. And I thought about it, like, oh, that actually makes sense. Like when you've got a gravel event on the calendar, it's daunting enough that you want to do some preparation for it. But if you show up and you're not as fit as you thought you might have wanted to be, it's fine. Like you're still going to do the thing and it'll be fine. And there'll be people around you some of the time and you'll be by yourself for part of the time.
Hmm.
Whereas road cycling, it's so thinly sliced. You have to have a very specific type of fitness on a given day, and even just dumb luck. Like the person in the break is having one experience, the person in the group is having another experience, and the person who got dropped and is wondering why they got up early to drive 2 hours to pay money to feel bad about themselves is having a very different experience. So, um, yeah, gravel
Hmm.
feels the events community. The word community gets thrown around a lot, and I think rightfully so because that's like this event in Columbia in particular, like uh, definitely left feeling like I had a whole bunch of new friends, which is not the case often when you leave a road race. You're like,
No,
I
you're
hate,
like, I've
I hate
made
that
some new
person. That person
enemies.
tried to kill
Yeah.
me. That guy is a moron. Yeah. I mean,
It's
and
yeah.
don't get me wrong. Like I love road cycling. That's still a primary thing for me. But the difference is very pronounced, and some of like what can be negative about road cycling is much less pronounced. for
Hmm.
gravel. So
Yeah.
for these reasons, and then the last one would be just like seeing a to answer your question, just seeing a what I hope is a business opportunity of doing gravel bike reviews on YouTube. And that yes, there's the 800-pound gorilla GCN Global Cycling Network on YouTube, but they're not going to touch bike reviews with a 10-foot pole because that's not their business model. Their
Right.
business model is if the bikes there are paid for. It's product placement, which is absolutely fine. But um,
Hmm.
yeah, what I've been doing is making this my business as a one-man band, having sponsors who are adjacent to bike stuff, such as Giro helmets, Castelli clothing, Silka,
Hmm.
Feedback, First Endurance, and then Shimano shoes. Um, so I don't cover those. I don't review things in those categories, that leaves me wide open to do whatever I want, say whatever I want about the bikes and the rest of the gear. So
Hmm. I love it. I love it. Okay, so we've kind of like almost introduced the elephant into the room here, talking about the difference between road and gravel. And you mentioned the hydration packs. I didn't put this on the list of questions, but we have to get into it. I mean, is the spirit of gravel alive and well? Are the roadies ruining it? What's your stance, Ben?
I love the drama. So I
I
like
know.
I'll lean into the fights of, is there even a spirit? Like how distilled is this spirit? Like who's in
What
possession of this
proof?
spirit? Yeah, what proof is this spirit? Um, yeah, I was at Steamboat Gravel when the one of the early Spirit of Gravel. Um, what's the word I'm looking for when it's like something's a big uh, to do dramatic thing. Um, Drama happened
Kerf-
with
Kerfuffle.
a kerfuffle. Yeah, there's a spirit kerfuffle, a kerfuffle of the spirit. Uh, Lauren Decker Shinzo won in dominant fashion and took a water bottle from one of her male teammates. And that was a fun story to write. Like, as a journalist, as a storyteller, that was a fun thing. And that's what I love about the sport of gravel, the gear of gravel, the community of gravel, is that we don't know yet. It's still in its nascent days. It's still being defined as to what it is, and that's part of the fun. Whereas road cycling, it's pretty well defined what it is and what the different disciplines are and what the best technology is. It's being
Hmm.
refined in a tiny way, but it's pretty. It's been around for a while. Um, yeah, I like that there is no set format for what gravel is, and that we can still argue about what it is and what it should be, whether that's gear or like how long the event should be. Should
Hmm.
aero bars be allowed? Should it be a team format? Should it be timed? Is racing itself against the spirit of gravel? I think these are fun discussions to have.
I agree. I agree. And yeah, I mean, yeah, as journalists, naturally, like we lean into it. I mean, you could almost argue that the journalists have really like fueled this fire pretty hard
Yes,
because
yes,
I mean, look, we don't get that much to talk about in cycling that is like dramatic like this. So and like positively dramatic, right? Like we're not ruining anyone's life with this. This is not like doping allegations. This is not like just horrific like career ending stuff. This
no.
is just awkward etiquette issues, which I find like the petty drama's fun.
It's grown ass people in stretchy pants arguing about how to best recreate. Yeah, it's
Yep.
no one is being injured here. It's just fun and
Exactly.
games.
Exactly. Okay. Unbound, I mean, we've mentioned it because how can you not talk about it when you talk about gravel? Is it still king? Does it have like can it get unseated? This is the question. Like what races are going to be the big ones? Is Unbound always just going to be the race? What's your
Is it
take?
is king still, is that gender appropriate language in 2024?
Okay, still top royalty? Top dog?
King's good, queen's good, whatever you like. I think so. I think that it is the one race in the world that can make a aspiring rider's career. You can put a lot. There's gravel races have a lot of funny names. You could win a lot of different little races and put that on your resume, and most people, even cyclists, would have no idea what the heck you're talking about. Unbound is, yeah, it's still the big one for sure, and it and Steamboat are two of the very few races that have a total feeding frenzy around them still in terms of registration for participants who obviously make up the bulk of what gravel riding and racing is. Unlike road racing, where there's pro races are one thing, and then there are amateur events, which are something different entirely. And so,
Hmm.
gravel is still so tiny that there's this, you know, races have both, and it's mostly a participant thing, and there'll be a handful of pros, and for both categories, yeah, Unbound's still the big one,
Hmm.
and the 200 mile for whatever reason like that is kind of solidified as the defining event.
Yeah. Now, have you seen more and more races adding longer events and trying to kind of push up to the 200, or do you think that everyone's just kind of sitting back and letting Unbound keep that 200 for themselves? Like I
There,
always joke there, when I was doing my first 100 miler running the month before, the cover of Trail Runner magazine read, "Is 200 the new 100?" And I swear to God, I almost dropped out of the race. I was just so furious about it.
yeah, yeah. I think there's um, two trends happening simultaneously that are opposing. One is amongst promoters a bit of one-upsmanship of, oh yeah, your race is 100 miles, ours is 150. Oh yeah, yours is 150, ours is 200. So there's that for sure. And especially with ultras, like nonstop ultras, yeah, race promoters like journalists like a bit of hyperbole. The bestest, the biggest, the baddest, the scariest. Like that's a good tagline, and that can drive some registrations, and it's fun to brag about. So there's that. Also, if you look at race numbers in terms of registrations, it is never the longest event that has the most numbers. So Unbound, for instance, has everything from 25, 50, 100, 200, and then the XL, invite only XL, 350 miles, which is, they're all nonstop. The 100 and maybe the 50 are the biggest ones by far in terms of race numbers. Same thing goes for Steamboat. Um, you look at most races where they offer different distances, which is a cool thing about gravel racing, is that you can pick whatever distance you want. It's not, okay, Molly, you're female of a certain age bracket. This is your category. Ben, you're male. You go in this other category over here.
Hmm.
Gravel, you just get to pick, like, yeah, I want to go for a big hairy challenge. Let's do the 200. Or you know what, like 50 is good and plenty. Um, Most people will pick the one of the middle distances because like that's can be plenty of challenge, but it just won't leave you waxed. And now that we have this huge proliferation of races, people want to do more of them. Um, so you can only do so many gigantic things in a year.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, so in your mind, what are some of the big ones that are like gonna be big or are currently big this year? Is it just the Lifetime Grand Prix, or are there other races, and SBT obviously, but are there other races that are sort of seeming like they're getting more and more excitement around them?
Sure. Well, looking at it with a the myopic North American lens, it's there's three big ones, four big ones. Sorry, yeah, the Lifetime series for sure, um, Steamboat Gravel in Steamboat Springs, the Belgian Waffle Ride series, um, and then Mid South.
Right.
So in my mind, those are the four big ones. Um, with Steamboat and Mid South just being one day events and others having a bunch of more. I think what the big challenge for a lot of promoters is what makes gravel riding so exciting for participants is the grass is always greener. That's a big world. Let's go explore. Did this race. That was cool. What's the race in the next state over? What's around that bend? What's over there? Um, and some I've certainly heard from many of the Lifetime Grand Prix racers. So the Grand Prix races are open to everyone, but there's the Grand Prix contestants. 32 women, 32 men. Are racing for a $250,000 prize purse. A number of them are like, we've already done these races a couple of years in a row now, and kind of be nice to do something else. But this is where the media attention is and some of the money. So let's go do that
Hmm.
again. So um, I don't think that there's one particular little race that once people discover it's going to blow up and be huge, so much as there's so many different events out there that I think um, a lot of folks will just bounce around from event to event and try new ones.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
that is a good point. Gravel racing does tend to be pretty like bucket list oriented almost, where it is just like, yeah, what are the cool different ones we're gonna try this year, rather than I'm gonna go back and like beat my time. There's a couple races like that, but it's definitely, yeah, more of like a destination kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, and the conditions can change so much that like thinking of like whether you're running a 10K or a 5K or a marathon or whatever. Um, Obviously that courses can vary, but it can be pretty comparable of like trying to just up your time
Hmm.
each year or beat your buddy. But like, think of a dry mud south is 4 hours. A wet mud south is like 6.5 hours. Um,
Hmm. Yeah,
and
so you can't even really compare year over year to like see improvements for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Let's get into the big category, like the big topic we have here, the
Okay.
gear, gravel
The gear.
bikes. Yeah,
Yeah.
gravel bikes. Okay, what's in this season? Like give me like an overview. Is there any kind of distinct changes you're seeing in the 2024 bikes? Is it kind of just more of the same, just like little tweaks? What's sort of the overarching 2024 vibe for our new bikes here?
A few things. I mean, the one, there's like an industry glut right now, so it's a good time to buy a bike, and so that's a positive thing for everybody.
Hmm.
Storage is a trend. A lot of like down tube, little secret boxes are showing up on more and more bikes, and that's a nice thing for carrying stuff. Wider tires continues to generally be a trend, um, not just for you know doing rugged rides, but even for racers. We're seeing tires that where 40 was pretty standard now, like a 45 or even maybe a 50
Yeah.
clearance is something that more people are looking for. Um, I don't think we're seeing gravel suspension stick really. Um, in terms of brands offering it or people buying a lot of it. Um, and this is certainly my bias, but I think just a flexible carbon seat post and some thick handlebar tape that you like is generally the sweet spot for most folks. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of gravel suspension pop up. That said, like Lauren's one Transcordilleras on a full on mountain bike with drop bars.
Hmm.
But that's pretty extreme use case. I don't think that's going to become the gravel bike of 2024 by any means. Um, SRAM keeps pushing the envelope pretty hard. So prices are coming down on stuff. So their fourth tier Apex group, electronic shifting, hydraulic braking, is making those two technologies more affordable. One thing that makes me a little bit uncomfortable as a bike reviewer guy is telling people who aren't really into bikes how much these toys cost. Like coming out of hotels or whatever, like, oh, that's a nice bike. How much is that? Like $1,000? I'm ashamed to say sometimes how much the thing costs. I'm like, I feign ignorance. I don't know. It's not my bike. I don't know. So SRAM Apex Group is like there's a Lauf Segla now that you can get with that group, carbon frame, $2,600, and that's in my perspective, that's a screaming deal. So that's a positive thing.
Hmm.
Shimano's also rolling out new stuff. I was riding their new 12 speed in Colombia. Sorry, I just got a puppy. We got a puppy in the house a few days ago. So if you hear some
Oh,
yelping, oh yeah, she's adorable. Doesn't even have a name yet. Her name was
oh
Chicken at the
goodness.
pound. But so we're if you got any name suggestions, throw them out there.
Oh my goodness. Can you pick, is she small enough to pick up so I can see her here?
Oh yeah,
This is
hold on.
yeah. Like clearly I need to see this dog.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
How, right? It's cutest puppy ever.
oh
So when I was
my
on my
gosh.
yeah,
So wait, is
yeah,
today like
she's
the first day you've met her, or did you meet her before you left for Colombia?
Oh no, my wife and daughter got her while I was gone. So my wife and mostly my daughter was sending me like 20 pictures a day of this pup, and then I was sending her pictures of all the dogs walking around in the streets in Colombia. But yeah, I
Oh
just
my
met her this morning for the
goodness.
first time.
Oh my goodness. What a
Such a cutie.
precious. Oh man, I think we're gonna have to have like a puppy meetup at some point. She's adorable. Okay, back to the point here.
Yeah.
Where were we? Shimano bringing out some stuff.
Yes, Shimano's got stuff. So I was just riding their relatively new 12-speed GRX mechanical group. Super wide gearing. It went from like what we used to call a mountain bike cassette of a 1051, which was just enough low gear for some of these 20 plus gradient climbs that Columbia has. Um, so big tires is a trend, and big gears is also a trend. Both, like all things bike, depends on where you live and how you like to ride. But
Hmm.
like a lot of folks are trying to push the envelope a little bit more, and bigger tires and bigger gears helps with that.
Hmm. Do you think will we see the return to like uh two speeds in the front in order to accommodate for like broader range of gears, or do you think we're in one by territory, or what do you think?
One by is certainly what looks the coolest on Instagram, but two by is not dead yet entirely. Both SRAM and Shimano still have two by offerings for gravel. Campy just came out with a cheaper version of its Ekar group, which is one by only. Yeah, the majority of the bikes are still two by. I'm sorry, the majority of the bikes are still one by, but yeah, two by is still very much a viable option with like the latest and greatest tech.
Hmm.
So I hope it doesn't
Yeah.
go away. I like it. I
Yeah, I
like it.
mean, especially if you're someone who, I mean, travels a lot to races and are like, hitting pretty variable terrains and stuff, like it gives you a lot more options, even if, yeah, it doesn't look as cool. It looks a little more old school, but you know what? My first bike had down tube shifters, so
Yep, there you go. There you go.
um, well, on that note, I mean, any tips for someone as far as like choosing gearing, especially now that we have so many direct to consumer bikes that people are buying online, just like any kind of like overarching thoughts about like how someone can look at a bike online and be like, that's the one I should get for where I live.
Sure. Two things. One is compare what you're looking at to what you have. I mean, if you're just buying your very first bike, awesome, fantastic, welcome. Go to a shop. Let them help you. Don't just take a swing in the dark with an online thing and hope for the best. Like there's plenty of great direct to consumer brands. I'm not saying they're a bad thing, but having help at any time is great, in
Yeah.
particular when you're starting out. So that would be my number one piece of advice for somebody who's buying a bike for the first time is go to a shop, ideally one that comes well recommended, or a couple shops. Shop around with your shops, get on the thing, see how they feel. Because if you don't know what the numbers mean, it's just going to be useless data points. If you already have a bike, like a road bike or a mountain bike, compare that data to what um, is online if you're buying online for the bikes, both in terms of geometry and gearing. Um, and I think the main thing is like relax, whether you're riding or buying or think about or in an event. Like if you're buying, to answer your question, use your best judgment and get something and know you can make changes. It's not like you're stuck in glue forever and ever and you're going to be married to this one particular chain ring or cassette. Like you can make
Hmm.
changes,
That's
and some
true.
might be
Yeah.
very cheap, some might not be super cheap, but yeah, these things can be addressed. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
going with a little bit more gear versus a little bit less if you're uncertain, would probably be the way to go.
Yeah. And okay, I mean, I didn't really even ask you a couple of your favorite bikes you've reviewed lately. What are some of the ones that are just like top tier? You loved it. Everything about it was fantastic.
Sure. One bike that I'm happy to recommend. I need to do a new video on this. My last year I did a top 5 gravel bikes of 2023. Number one there was Giant Revolt for a few reasons. One is I love how that thing feels, which is a big part of it. Like the touch points are great. The Geo is great. It's got a nice long carbon seat post for some cush. It can handle big tires, but it doesn't feel sluggish when you're running like a 40 mil tire. The one I had for a while and used for Unbound had Shimano GRX Di2, which is a group that I adore. And that bike comes, because it's from Giant, comes in a variety of price points. So you can get the Super Gucci version, or you can get something for more like $1,000 or $2,000, and a lot of different options in between. So that's one I'm happy to endorse unilaterally. And then others, it's sort of like beer. It's like, what kind do you like? Do you like stouts? Do you like porters? Do you like saisons? Do you like a lager? So yeah, that's probably the most common question I get. Hey, what bike should I get? Followed by like, what tire should I get? Which to both I respond, well, what do you like? I don't.
Yeah.
So it depends. Not to duck out of that question too much, but it just depends on what
I always
people are
joke,
looking for.
if we have someone on and they don't say it depends at least once in the episode, I don't trust them. So so good job on that. You've earned my trust.
Yeah.
On the note of like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll just give you like another like little bit of answer. Like there's the tech part and then there's the emotional part. And I was lucky enough when in Colombia to ride a Scarab, which is made in Retiro, just southeast of Medellin, and went to the factory where they make the bikes and paint the bikes, just do gorgeous paint jobs, and hung out with the guys and gals who worked there for a few days, and having that connection to the people and the place has definitely transferred like an emotional attachment for me to this steel framed carbon fork bicycle that would have not existed before. And I think that's absolutely part of the equation too. It's like, how do you feel about the bike? Literally how it feels to sit on the thing. Like if the saddle doesn't agree with you, it doesn't matter if you spent $10,000 on it. Like that's gonna suck. Like you have to like how it feels. And then one knock against the Giant, some people are like, well, I just don't like how it looks. It just kind of looks funny. Like you gotta like how your toys look, and liking how you emotionally feel about your favorite toy recreational vehicle that's mechanism. That's absolutely important. So yeah, and I'm still drunk on the Kool-Aid of Columbia and Scarab. So that's one that's riding high on my list right now. Not for a technical reason. It's a steel bicycle, but for emotional life experience attachment. So
oh yeah, no, I
those are my
100%
two
get
answers
that.
for you.
Yeah. As someone who still has their canty brake like titanium moots, because at the time it was like the smallest cyclocross bike that ever made. I'm very short. Like I will forever love that bike, and it's impossible to race it anymore because canty brakes. But I just deeply love that bike so much.
Yeah, and it will last forever because they make quality
Exactly
titanium machines.
And sadly, they cannot retrofit it for disc brakes. I've checked. I've tried. I'm like, could you melt it down and just use the same exact titanium so it's still the same? They're like, no, we don't do that. That's ridiculous.
You don't need brakes for cross. They just slow you down.
Yeah, it's fine.
All the canties do is just squeak to warn the person in front of you that you're about to hit them as you're sliding down the hill in the mud.
Exactly. Yeah, we actually made for Consummate Athletes web shop. We have a canty brake shirt that has a picture of a canty brake and it says "Can't stop, didn't stop" for all the people that are still out there racing them.
I like it.
I was very proud of that one. Yeah. Okay, coming back to actually the note about the Giant and it coming in all these different tiers. If someone's buying a new bike, what is like the lowest level of group set you would go with? And I mean, I know it's if you can't afford anything other than the cheapest one, then like that's absolutely the best one. But like for someone who's got a little bit of money saved up and they maybe can't go like super bougie, but they want to get something that's going to last. What's your sort of like lowest tier that you'd go for like good and durable?
Yeah, again, like that totally depends on like
totally depends
who it is. If at all possible, I would go with a bike shop bike, not a Walmart or a department store bike.
Oh yeah,
Um, yeah, Walmart has a lot of Shimano and SRAM parts on its bikes, but um, I wouldn't recommend those as my like 100% endorsement. But yeah, it's yeah, I'm just cautious because there's such a variety of budgets out there in the world. I
for
don't want to be
sure.
like, oh, you can't ride a bike or have fun unless you spend $4,000.
Totally.
Um, so yeah, that's absolutely, and it depends one.
Hmm.
That said, I'm excited to see both Shimano and SRAM, and now even Campy coming out with what I see as high quality modern parts at more realistic, attainable prices. So the Eckhart GT or SRAM's Apex or Shimano being such an engineer-led company, it's all letters and numbers, not words, but like their most affordable version of GRX. Those are
Hmm.
absolutely um, good products in my experience.
No, for sure. And I remember, I mean, 15 years ago, it really was if you were going like the lowest price option on, one of those giants or whatever, yeah, the components weren't that good. But at this point, yeah, we've just come such a long way with components, I think, that even the cheaper models of them have just gotten like so much better. So yeah, those of us who've been buying bikes for a long time are like maybe more gun shy around the like low price ones,
Yeah,
but they're
yeah,
probably
yeah,
a billion times better than what we were riding back in 2008.
for sure, for sure. And I mean, back then it was like the stuff will be heavier and wear out and not work as well immediately and wear out much more quickly. And
Hmm.
now it's skewing more towards it's just extra weight. Like the
Hmm.
trade-off is for uh, not spending as much money, is it's just going to weigh a bit more, and that's certainly the case with electronic stuff. Is
Hmm.
it's either very similar in the case of Shimano or almost identical in the case of SRAM electronic parts that um, you're getting, and then it's just more metal instead of carbon or fancy plastic. So it's just
Hmm.
heavier.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Outside of the bike, what are some of like the best accessories you've found for your gravel riding in the past year? Like, and this could be anything from hydration to helmets. I mean, I know you're obviously like working with some of these companies like Giro and stuff, but honestly, I love Giro. So hit me with good helmets, hit me with anything. What's great right
Sure.
now?
What is great? Keeping the bike rolling is great. So tubeless tires are a thing of beauty. And sealant instead tubeless tires is a thing of beauty. And yeah, happy to have Silka support. So yeah, go buy lots of Silka sealant, and that will help you out. It's any type of sealant in tubeless tires is a great thing.
Hmm.
Um, and
Have you
it's
learned any like hot
really
tips about setting up tubeless tires or like keeping them rolling? Because, I know a lot of people that get to races with sealant all in their bike bag, or they haven't actually added sealant to their bike or to their tires for, 3 years, and they're like confused why it's not sealing.
sure, sure. Yeah, there's many ways to screw it up, and I've done all of them. Often many times. I think that the main thing is practice, like ahead of the event.
Yeah.
Again, speaking of someone who has screwed that up multiple times, like figuring out how to put sealant in your tires. You shouldn't be doing that on race morning. Um, Another thing I was going to list is Dynaplugs are these handy things that if plan A's don't get a flat, plan B is if there is a puncture, your sealant will take care of it. And then plan C, if you've got some sort of plug, whether it's like a Stand Start or Genuine Innovations bacon strips, or my favorite is Dynaplugs, you can jam that piece of vulcanized rubber in the tire, and that seals up the hole. And then you would just add a little bit of air with the CO2 cartridge or your pump, and um, instead of having to take off your wheel and take off the tire, and then there's goop going everywhere, you're just back up and rolling in a matter of seconds if you're super fast, or just a couple minutes. So those are and using practicing your plugs outside of an event is definitely the way to go. um, as far as setting it up,
Yeah.
yeah, just taking a minute to learn how to do it will go a long way. And getting the tire bead down in the well, the center channel of the wheel makes a huge difference. And if you're, long time clincher user from road bikes, you might be wrestling with your tire a lot more than you need to just because you're doing it wrong. So yeah, go to the World Wide Web and spend 2 minutes looking at how to mount a tubeless tire, and like that might be an aha moment for you.
Hmm. I do. I love any talk of practicing before a race. I think is just so important because so many of us get in the race and it's the first time we've ever contended with a flat.
Yeah, yeah, and then
On
you're
that,
flustered, so you're like not functioning at your peak to begin with.
yeah,
So, and
yeah,
some of it's like
exactly.
the Donald Rumsfeld known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. Like you don't know what you're gonna have to deal with until you're there, and um,
Hmm.
yeah, that goes back to my earlier point of like just relax. Um,
Yeah,
like yeah, you can sort it out. And if you can't, there will probably be somebody willing to help you sort it out.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the more
exactly.
the more you can practice ahead of time, the better. And that goes for like getting prep for events too.
Well,
I'm
that's what I
sure
was
this
going
is
to ask
something you.
next is, yeah, I mean, you've been doing all these different events, you're traveling all over, you're going to all these new ones that you've never been to before. So yeah, walk us through what like the best moves are for getting to the start line smoothly.
It's doing dress rehearsals and practicing the duration or close to the duration and the terrain and the gear. Um, think about something like doing a triathlon that involves a lot of specialized gear. And if the first time you're getting on a TT bike with a disc wheel and a goofy helmet is the day of the race and there's 30-mile-an-hour gusts, like you're not going to be happy. You're going to be uh, wrestling with your bike more than just pedaling the bike. So yeah,
Hmm.
similar deal with with gravel stuff. Of like get comfortable with your gear by using it, ideally on the terrain and over the type of duration that you're expecting to do, so that when it comes down to event day, you just can enjoy the um, like riding the momentum of the big groups and not trying to figure out how to do stuff.
Hmm.
Granted, some of the fun of events is going to new places and new terrain and new things, and if you can get there a day or two early, great. If not, like that's okay. Like just enjoy it.
Hmm. Yeah. I also find gravel events are sort of interesting because like road, cyclocross, mountain bike, you sort of know what you're getting into because most of them are, USA Cycling. So they all have like the schedule that they have to post. They have like the registration that's very like straightforward. Gravel events, it seems like not to say that they're all over the place in a bad way, but they are all over the place in that like they're not really beholden to any like rules around it. So I think like even just being very like clear on when registration is or like when you can pick up your packet and when the start is and all this stuff can sometimes be like a little harder to find, I'm gonna say,
Oh yeah,
than maybe like road racing and stuff.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Maybe that's part of the spirit of gravel. It's just wild, man.
Whoa. We've come full circle. We've come full circle. Okay, what's on your schedule? What do you have this season?
What's coming up? So going to Taipei here in a week for the Taipei show. I'm curious to see how much gravel stuff will pop up there. I suspect it'll be you know, largely e-bikes and some road and mountain. But yeah, it's curious to see what the industry is talking about there. Um, After that, it's the Mid South in Stillwater. And that is an event that I heartily endorse. Have been going to that for a number of years, and I love the fact that it's like a 3.5 day community thing. Um, and that all gravel races, like we're talking about at the start, have the range of competers to completers, but most will skew kind of one way or the other. And Mid South does a great job of delivering what a lot of race promoters are talking about, that it's um, a big community gathering, and I don't know, there's so many different rides before the race itself. Like Ripton's got a shakedown ride, and Chamois Butter's got a shakedown ride, and Zip and Shram have a ride, and there's um, a beer release party, and there's a music festival, and people go and enjoy hanging out riding bikes
Hmm.
ahead of the event itself.
Yeah.
Um,
They're also one of the few events that puts on a run at the same time or like the same
mhm,
weekend. And
mhm,
I'm shocked that more gravel events haven't gotten on board with that, because to me, I'm like, that's such an obvious moneymaker, because like, for Peter and I, like he'd go ride he'd ride, I'd run. Like it'd be
mhm,
so simple. Or I would do both,
mhm. Yeah, yeah, you can do the
which
double.
is the
You could do
plan
a
for one of these years.
you could do a 50K run on Friday on the rugged but beautiful clay roads, and then do a 100-mile ride the next day.
Easy
Knock
peasy.
yourself out. Yeah, so doing that, I'll do I like doing a mix of the big ones and the small ones, and that's something I would recommend to folks, not to do a ton of them, like, I'm definitely spoiled them anyways, but I'd recommend doing a large one or going to a large one. Like, even if you're not gonna compete or complete it, like going to Unbound to volunteer or to support your buddies. That's um, a great way to get a secondhand high and like appreciate the different facets of big gravel events because yeah, it's something and it's contagious. Um,
Hmm.
and it's something that fundamentally you can't do by yourself. Like people like to complain about the cost of events, and like that's a real thing for sure. But events do provide a number of things that can only happen when somebody takes the time to organize a
Yeah.
bunch of us. And so going to a big one is cool. And so, yeah, like we talked about, like one of the lifetime ones, or Steamboat, or one of the Belgian waffle rides, um,
Hmm.
or Mid South had put in like the big event bucket.
Hmm.
Um, and then going to a little one, I think is also like in a place you've never been before. That's a great way to go experience a new place and see a new place and meet folks and have the fun to stress ratio be pretty high. Um,
Hmm. Okay,
so
you also have like a slightly high stress ratio one on your calendar. I happen to know because we both do a little bit of, or we've both been doing a little bit of stuff with Ingamba. You're
yes,
riding with you and Laurence are going to become like BFFs at this point.
yeah. I hope he's friendly to me because like his ability could very easily kill me through cycling. Yeah, we're gonna do. Yeah, this is a road thing. Riding the length of Portugal in 3 days. So normally Ingamba does this is a 7 day trip, which seems like the civilized way to do it. But this trip is 3 days, so it's like 120 to 50 miles a day, and I can't remember how many. I tried to blank out the amount of climbing.
Probably a good
Um,
idea. Yeah.
a lot of climbing, but just being spoiled absolutely rotten by the high end luxury service that Ingamba provides of, Pinarello dogmas to ride that are taken care of by professional mechanics every day. And there's a masseuse, so you get a massage like you're a pro every day, and, you know, absurdly good food and views. And so, yeah, that's going to be both a big challenge and a big treat. Yeah, so that's in
Hmm.
April. That's in April. Yeah, so um, I should probably
Busy,
start training
busy.
for that.
Yeah,
Should
I
probably
mean,
start training.
I think you kind of did in Colombia here. Although now that you have this new puppy, I feel like your training is going to go off a cliff. That's what happened to us. You're just so into the puppy that it's very hard to get your hours in. You're like, I just want to be. She's home. I should be back with her, especially when you're
Hmm.
traveling a lot.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
may,
Be
you'll
some
have to
puppy
set her up
juggling,
like yeah, like you'll have to set up like your trainer next to the couch so she can like sit on the couch with you while you ride.
or I could go full, Alexei Vermeulen style and get the little puppy pack.
I'm actually
Like,
just picturing you riding the trainer with the puppy pack though.
hmm.
So she's
Hmm.
just on your back, like indoors.
Yeah, or could do like, you know, when our kids are grown now, but like we had the baby Bjorns, which is like the front swaddling
Yep.
uh thing. Yeah, maybe we could try that for this pub.
Yeah, there you go. You've got it
Great
figured
ideas.
out.
Well,
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, well, before we wrap up, tell everyone where they can find you, follow you, keep up with all of these adventures, all of the cool new gear you're checking out.
The best way is on the YouTube. The channel is called The Ride with Ben Delaney. So just searching that or just searching my name on YouTube and a bunch of Stretchy Pants gravel videos will pop up. And yeah, I've absolutely enjoyed both the chats with people uh, on the platform, but then meeting folks in person. Like I was really surprised by how many people in Colombia um, had been following me. So that was a cool thing to see, and definitely different than my many years of being a faceless byline for magazines and websites. So it was kind of a funny thing, but yeah, this the community aspect of going new places, trying new things, and meeting new folks. That's something that is definitely part of the magic formula for me and others with gravel cycling.
Hmm. Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Ben. This has been such a blast as always. Great to chat with you and talk about all this fun stuff.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.